All right, today we are digging into the hidden logic behind a number you see literally every single day, but probably don't think too much about: the speed limit. You're driving along and you see that sign, 50, 60, 80, and you have to wonder why that specific number. It might seem totally random, but the answer is this fascinating mix of science, a little bit of history, and even psychology. It goes way beyond just trying to get people to slow down. So, the most obvious reason for a speed limit is, of course, safety. And the stakes here are incredibly high, especially for pedestrians. They're really the most vulnerable people using our roads. Now, just look at how clearly this chart lays out the danger. The difference between getting hit at 40 kilometers an hour versus 60 is, well, it's staggering. A person's chance of survival plummets from 75% all the way down to just 15%. That small jump in speed has an absolutely massive impact on whether someone lives or dies. But here's the thing. While you'd think local safety data would be the main driver for these numbers, that hasn't always been the case. In fact, for a long time, one single number ruled the entire United States, for a reason that had absolutely nothing to do with pedestrian survival charts. For more than 2 decades, America was united under a single speed limit. It was this massive, unprecedented experiment in traffic control, and it was all kicked off by a crisis happening thousands of miles away from America's highways. It all started with the 1973 oil crisis. To try and conserve fuel, the federal government passed the National Maximum Speed Law, which dropped the speed limit everywhere, from rural interstates to city highways down to 55 miles per hour. It was meant to be an emergency measure, but it ended up dominating American driving for the next 21 years. So the law was passed to save gas, but the reality, it was complicated. The fuel savings were pretty tiny, and while road deaths did go down during this time, it's really hard to say how much of that was the speed limit versus things like safer cars and more people wearing seatbelts. But what was crystal clear was that almost nobody followed the law. By the 80s, some studies showed that on certain highways, more than 80% of drivers were speeding. And this frustration wasn't just coming from drivers. Even law enforcement was questioning the logic. This quote from South Dakota's Highway Patrol director back in 1986 just sums it up perfectly. "It felt like a total waste of time and resources to be ticketing someone for going 60 on a road that was clearly engineered for 70. So when that federal limit was finally repealed in 1995, the power went back to the states and their traffic engineers. So how do they decide the right speed for a road today? Well, it's a really data-driven process that basically boils down to 2 key ideas. First up, engineers measure something called the operating speed. You could think of this as drivers voting with their gas pedals. They actually go out and measure how fast people are really driving on a road when the conditions are good. And that 85th percentile speed, the speed that 85% of people are driving at or below, is a huge clue as to what drivers feel is a reasonable and safe speed. And then they determine the target speed. Now this one's different. It's not measured, it's decided. It's the speed engineers believe is the safest and most appropriate for that road's purpose. Taking everything into account. The number of driveways, crosswalks, whether it's out in the country or in the middle of a city. The whole puzzle for the engineers is trying to balance these 2 things. When the operating speed, how fast people are actually going, is way higher than the target speed, how fast they should be going, that's a huge red flag. It means the real risks of the road just aren't obvious to the driver. And you can see here the right speed depends completely on the context. A big arterial road out in a rural area might have a target speed of 100 kilometers per hour. But you take that same type of road and drop it into a dense city center, and the target is suddenly just 50 or 60. The environment of the road dictates everything. Now, this brings up a really crucial question. If safety is the ultimate goal, is slower always safer? Well, the answer is surprisingly complex, and it peels back another layer of traffic science. You might think so, right? It just feels intuitive. Of course, slower is safer. But decades of research have uncovered this counterintuitive truth about traffic safety, and it all comes down to being predictable. This is a simplified look at the famous Solomon curve, which was first published way back in 1964. It shows that your risk of getting into a crash is actually lowest when you're traveling near the average speed of traffic. The risk goes up, not just if you're speeding, but also if you're driving way slower than everyone else around you. So the real takeaway here isn't just about speed, it's about being unpredictable. That's what's dangerous.
When you drive much slower or much faster than everyone else, you create more interactions, more lane changes, and just more potential for things to go wrong. And this is why that operating speed we talked about is so important. When the speed limit is set near the speed most people are naturally driving anyway, it encourages a smooth, predictable flow. And that minimizes that dangerous speed variance.
Okay, so this is where all these ideas finally come together. If drivers naturally go at a speed that feels right for the road, and if it's safest to travel at about the same speed as everyone else, how do you make the speed that feels right also the speed that is safe? The answer isn't just to post a lower number on a sign. I mean, we saw how well that worked with the 55-mile-per-hour experiment. The real key is to change the road itself, to send the right signals to the driver's brain. And this is where road design is so clever. Engineers use these traffic calming techniques to actually change the feel of the road. Things like making lanes narrower, adding curb extensions, or putting in roundabouts. They all send these subconscious signals to the driver that just say, hey, slow down. The goal is to make that safe target speed feel like the natural operating speed. This is the whole concept of a self-explaining road. It's a road where the design itself, not just the sign, tells you the proper speed. It's about making safety feel intuitive and aligning what feels right with what is right. And that leaves us with one last thought for the road ahead. As cars start to drive themselves, are they going to obey the limits that we've set through all this history and engineering? Or are they going to analyze traffic flow, road design, and risk in real time to create a new, perfectly optimized, and constantly changing speed limit all on their own? The entire system we've just explored might soon be completely reinvented by the cars themselves.